Hi, what I'd like to do in this video is to go through the configuration of a Cisco Aironet 1200. I have an older Aironet 1200, but the Aironet is a series, so hopefully there'll be some similarities in them. If you bought one of these things and don't know what to do, the first thing, or the easiest way, and what I'm going to do, is the web interface. But you note here that we have the console port and an Ethernet port, so that you can try, if you would like, and I did the first time, to do it via the console port, via the command line. And I found out that the access point is a little bit different than configuring a router. So what I did was find the procedure, the process, and once you get there, it's pretty straightforward how to do it. But how we're going to configure this thing using the web interface. The first thing that you may need to do, is to reset the system. To do that, you're going to hold down the mode button while you plug in the 48 volt DC power connector. When you do that, you're going to get an amber light on the top of the system. Little reformatting here, different picture. When you hold down the mode button and plug it in, you'll get an amber light here in the middle. Once you get that, release the mode button, let it start up. When it does start up, if you're connected to a network, it'll get a DHCP address, and you can go to your DHCP server and find out what that is. If it's not connected to anything, it will assign itself a 10.0.0.1 address with a 24-bit subnet mask. The recommendation is that you use addresses 2 through 10, I believe, to contact us. Since you only need one, you can use 10.0.0.2. Back quickly to the other picture of the access point. These two areas here are where the antennas would plug in. So this thing has two antennas, Ethernet port, and a console port. And then the power plugs in here. It's 2.4 gigahertz system, and if you notice here, it uses a 48 volt DC power supply. Again, changing the size of the picture. What I want to do right now is connect to mine, as long as I can get the address in right. It's waiting. And when you get connected, it's going to ask for a username, which is Cisco, and the password is Cisco with a capital C. And we connect to it. Take here a second to sort itself out. The transmission rate, the radio is down, you'll notice here. The fast Ethernet port's up. That's the only reason I can connect to it. It's a 10 megabit per second Ethernet port and a 54 megabits per second radio. I said it's not exactly a new access point, but process should be essentially the same for all of them. I'll go to the Express setup, and the 10.0.0.1 is the address that it would have given itself. It will then come and show me what the IP address is, the DHCP IP address is for the system. I'm going to change it just because I really want to change it. Select static, so we'll go into statics, and I had an error there, 10.10.62. I'm going to make this 10, and this is for my convenience when I do the configuration a little bit with a radius server. After you make any change to any page on this thing, we can change the host name if we wanted to, AP, and there's no, I'm just going to leave it there. You need to apply everything. So go over here and apply, and it's going to say the settings on this page will be updated. So we're going to update the settings on that page. And it's going to spin around here for a few seconds and ask for my credentials again. And we'll say OK and see if it actually will change them for me. Okay, so it is done spinning. I know you can't see the tab here, but it says that it's done and it's got that changed. This is now my IP address for the system. The next thing I want to do is go to Express Security. There are other things that we can do, and I'm going to make an SSID. We don't have an SSID, and we can't bring the radio interface up until we've created an SSID. So I'm going to just call the SSID radius because that's what I'm going to use. And now I want to go down here. I'm going to use WPA authentication. You notice that again, this is not real new. What this says for WPA, Wi-Fi protected. The settings: open authentication plus EAP plus network EAP authentication, key management, WPA mandatory, radius server 1645, which really shouldn't be that big a deal because we'll look at when we go to the Windows server, it allows both radius ports in, and these will be UDP ports. And this thing somewhere, Wi-Fi protected against database, should say that we're using TKIP, which I kind of messed myself up a little bit earlier by picking AES. This one I don't think really supports it. We can try both of them when we get there. So my radius server, and I know the radius server's address is 10.10.62.11. I've already set it up, and I have already put, I'm going to use a simple password. When we get to the radius server, I'll show you that you can generate a very complex password. I'm just going to use something simple here that I can remember and use. Maybe. And we will then apply it. It says the settings are going to change, and it's spinning around and around and around and around until we get back, and it's going to say, OK, we're done. Now let's go to the network interfaces, because remember the radio was down. I'll come back to this one in a second. The radio was down, so it says that it is disabled and down. Let me stop the video here and resize it so you can see a little bit more on the right. Let's just go to full screen here. So let's try the radio 802.11g. And when we go to this thing, we have the settings, the detail settings, and it's still down. Let's try settings here. I think that's the one that allows us to change it. So we can wait for this thing, and it should come up here in a second. It says that we are down, disabled, so we should be able to enable it, and it is an access point. We have other options. We can be a bridge, root bridge, work group bridge, and those sorts of things. Down here, the data rates, what do we want? Best throughput, the default, or the best range? Pick best throughput, and then it gives me tells me all of the data rates that are available, OFDM rates. When I go down here, I can pick a specific channel, pick the least congested, and let's just let it do it. If we use the world mode, multi-domain operation, which is disabled, we could specify indoor, outdoor, and what our country code is. So what I want to do is come down here, and I'm just going to leave everything else as the defaults and apply this. And it says some OFDM rates are now set at require this to prevent any 802.11b clients from associating. Not such a bad idea, since we're on a G network. We really only want G clients connected to it. So if I say OK, it says that we're going to update this system. When I do that and come back up here, it still says that I'm down and down, but it is enabled. Let's go back to, and I think this is just that the arrows didn't update properly. Let's go back to the network interfaces general, and it now says that, still says it's disabled and down, but I'm not sure that that's the case. And if you wait long enough, the little arrows will change to enabled and up. And if I go back to the network interfaces, because that's where I am, and let's go back to the radio. Maybe this thing's still spinning. So I'm going to pause it until it's ready to let me do something. Okay, so now it says it's my turn to be able to do something, and again, this is not the fastest interface configuration in the world. Let's go back to the Express Security setup, because something that I failed to show when we were there is down here, the SSID table. We now have created an SSID. Doesn't have a VLAN. The encryption here ciphers as TKIP, and that's important to know whenever we get to the configuration of the supplicant here in a few minutes. Authentication's OpenEAP and Network EAP. Key management's WPA. Broadcast SSID is not checked, so what I'll need to do, I really want it to be a broadcast SSID. I'm going to delete this one, and we'll do it all over again. So we can delete that SSID because it really only wants one at a time to broadcast. You can have multiple SSIDs, but it seems to only want one to broadcast. Radius, and we will broadcast it and go down here to WPA. Close that. And in the WPA, put our radius server in. Yeah, 10.10.62. I've got too many networks on the brain. 11, and then the password that we used for this thing, the secret, and we'll need the secret when we get over to the radius server. So it says it should be updated, and let's let it go around and around here. Hopefully it won't take as long to get there. And it now says we have a broadcast SSID. And the same thing we had before. The SSID name's radius, no VLAN, the cipher is TKIP, TKIP, and then open. Key management is WPA. I'm going to pause the video here a second and connect to the radius server because I have to go to it via a remote desktop. Okay, I've remote desktoped to a Windows Server 2008 server. To configure the radius, we need to use the network policy server, which I've already installed. I also have already installed a certificate, a server identification certificate on this thing. So I have the certificates, and I also on the supplicant have installed the certificate authority because I'm my own certificate authority. If it's not trusted, we go through all those. Maybe will not, won't disconnect, and those sorts of things. So let's go to the network policy server, and let me pause the video so that I can focus in on this particular portion of the configuration. So what I want to show here is only the policy server configurations of these things. There is one already configured here. I can use it. You can have multiple radius clients serviced by a single radius server. So if I go up here to the NPS local, the network policy server, the default says network access protection. What I want to do is go to the drop down, and I'm going to pick 802.1x wireless or wired configurations, and then we'll configure the 802.1x. We're going to do a secure wireless, and we could also do a secured wire, and we'll just leave it at the let's call it web demo so that we know what our policy is. wireless access point demo. And these are access points, they are not routers. So what we're going to do here is add the switches, and the friendly name of this thing is, let's call it radius WAP, or let's call it demo. Can't spell demo WAP, and we're going to put in the IP address of the client. The client is the wireless access point, and I think it was 10.10.62.10. And then with a shared secret that we used over there, just to show you, if you want to generate, you can generate a really good secret here. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go back and use my little simple one that I used on the other side. But the better the shared secret, obviously, the better the system's going to work for us. So hopefully they're the same. It says they're the same. And we can now, next, Microsoft Smart Card or other certificate. We're not going to do that. We're going to use Microsoft Protected EAP, PEEP, in order to do this one with. For the groups, I actually have created a group over here that has the users who will be authorized to get onto the system. So, and I think that I called it RAD access, and these would be where whoever you want to be able to access this wireless access point through the extensible authentication protocol would be. Okay, and it's probably going to tell me that it can't find it. It has, but then it finds it anyway. So we can say OK and continue here. VLAN, we don't have a VLAN. Next, and this tells me what I am. Radius clients demo WAP is what I'm using. Connection point, network access policies. So we should be finished. We can go down here and look at the network policies, and we have secure wireless connections 3 WAP demo. What we can do is move this one up. This is the one that we're using as ours. Move it up from 3 to 4. The way these things work, or from 4 to 3, the way these things work is you go in and look for a policy, and if you find a policy that applies, or the first policy that you find that applies is the one that you take, and then you don't look any further. We can look at this thing real quickly and look at the settings, encryption, and you should uncheck everything but the strongest encryption. I'm just going to leave it as the defaults. And then constraints, authentication methods, same way, only the strongest authentication methods. And with that, that should take care of configuring our Radius client. Not a whole lot to doing that one, and we now should be able to move on. Okay, I've opened the Network and Sharing Center here to try to keep this thing focused on the areas that we want to see. And then I'm going to go into Manage Wireless Settings. I need to add a network profile for this network name Radius. And then we're going to pick an encryption type, and this is going to be WPA Enterprise. And then TKIP was the protocol that we used. And we can start this connection automatically. I want to go in and look at the connection settings here briefly. We go into Security, WPA Enterprise, TKIP, Microsoft EAP. That all works. The certificate we have in here, the identification certificate, let me get down here and find it, is Radius Demo here. So we have that one, and we've enabled fast reconnect on the system. If I go into advanced settings, I think that I probably want to go in here. It says user or computer, and what I'm really going to do is use user, because we're going to use usernames and passwords to authenticate to this system. And I think that should take care of the configuration on the computer, the supplicant configuration. I'm going to pause and move down to the network area here. Okay, we're on obviously a Windows 7 machine, so I'm going to go down here and Internet access, click on this thing, and on radius I'll click on it, tell it I want to connect, and hopefully it's going to ask me for my credentials. Spinning, spinning, spinning. It may not, because I have actually done that before. Okay, so it asked me for username and password. So if I can remember who I put in that group and the password, let's see if it lets me in. Connection attempt could not complete. The credentials provided could not be validated. Said it couldn't be, but let's look, and it says I'm connected, so I guess it actually did validate them. That is the process, and I actually am on this thing, WPA, and you can see I'm on radius, WPA to 2.11g, SSID is radius. So with that, that's the configuration of the Aironet. There are other configurations. Once you get the basic done, you can. There's lots of documentation on the internet if you want to go much further into it to create different situations. It has lots of capability. It can be an access point. It can be a bridge. It can be a relay. A number of different things that we can use for it. So with that, now that we actually have it connected, I'm going to quit. I'm going to say I hope this has been useful, and thank you for watching.